Hi friends, this is our reading mini lesson for lesson 1 in our third week of distance learning. This week, our power standard is that we will analyze plot elements, including the sequence of events, the conflict, and the resolution. So you know that you have mastered this TEK when you can analyze all the elements of the plot, including sequencing events in order, understanding the conflict, and the resolution. There's a lot of vocabulary words in this TEK that I want to make sure that we understand going forward. So I know that you all are very familiar with plot. When I say plot, sometimes you scratch your head and you're like, what is plot? And I tell you, I'm going to do a hand motion, and as soon as I do the hand motion, you're going to understand exactly what plot is. And I do this motion with my hands. And every single time you say, oh, because you remember what plot is. Plot is the same thing as the story arc, which goes like this. Right? Remember this? So we know that all stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So in the beginning of the story, we are introduced to the characters and the setting. So the setting is where the story takes place, and the characters are the members of the story that move the plot forward. Now, I know in writing you are super familiar with the term uh-oh, phew. It's when, as the rising action happens, remember this? Rising action. That is the introduction of the problem. Something that is going to build and get bigger as the story moves forward. Because if a story was just a line, it'd be really boring and no one would read it. So there's always going to be a problem. There's always going to be a conflict in the story. And we call these in writing those uh-oh moments. Remember this? And it goes, uh-oh, the problem is introduced, and then uh-oh, the problem gets even bigger. And we also call this, in reading, the climax. When the climax happens, it's where the problem gets so big and something so huge happens that the characters typically change. Usually around this climax, we have that aha moment that we talked about last week. But the problem is solved. Like imagine you're on that roller coaster. You know, when you're at the tip top of that roller coaster, you can't possibly go any higher. You're teetering, peeking over the edge, and then, phew, you're on your way down. The climax is that moment. The problem cannot get any bigger, and something happens that causes the resolution. Or the phew. The problem is solved. Now, remember, because of those aha moments, things never go back to the way they were before. Change happens. It causes these characters to change. They are different than they were at the beginning of the story. The plot has caused them to change. So these are all terms that we're going to be using in the lesson for today. And I just wanted to remind you of everything that we've learned in third grade so far so that you can analyze those plot elements. Okay, here we go. So the story I chose for us today is called The Space Rock. And I chose to print the higher level text, but when you click on the link, it's going to take you to the text that you can read independently, or you can have it read to you. Just remember, the story arc is the same. The plot is the same. Our learning goal this week is to understand how all of those elements work together. So I'm going to read this text aloud. You're going to listen, and I'm going to be thinking aloud while I'm thinking through these plot elements. Let's get started. We live on a farm near the town of Rock Creek. My daddy was born and raised on the farm. So was his daddy, and his daddy's daddy. I guess you could say that we've been here just about forever, trying to make a go for it. It's hard, though. Lots of folks have given up and moved away, saying Rock Creek would just be a ghost town soon. Ghost town. My schema, my background knowledge, lets me know that a ghost town is when everyone moves away and leaves all the buildings there just standing, empty. Daddy laughed at that. Ghosts make fine enough neighbors, he said. All I ever wanted was this farm and a good family. I'm staying put. The day the rock fell from outer space, I was feeling sort of blue. I'm going to pause here because the setting has been set. The setting of this story is in Rock Creek, okay? And we already have met the characters. So far, we have the speaker. This is written in a first-person narrative. Someone is telling you the story from their own voice. And we know that there's also a dad involved. We'll see if other characters emerge, but the stage is set for the problem. And you already kind of have a feeling of what that problem is. The rock fell from outer space. I was feeling sort of blue. It was the Thanksgiving holiday, and the truck was busted, so we couldn't go nowhere. Mama and Daddy were worried about money. My sister had a new boyfriend. My twin brother was in our room sleeping. So we already have the cast of characters. We have Mom. We have Dad. We have the speaker, who we know is a boy, his twin brother, and his sister. Okay? I moped into the kitchen and found Mama cleaning the cupboards out. That's what she always did when we had money troubles. You don't bother Mama when she's cleaning out the cupboards. I went to my sister's room. She was on her bed talking on the phone. She told me to get. I wandered outside the barn to talk to Daddy, but he was talking to his truck. You don't disturb Daddy when he's talking to his truck. I walked back outside and called the dog. That's his real name. And he didn't come. See how it was? Just one of those wintry days that go on forever. I was walking down to the frozen creek when I found the dog sitting under an oak tree staring up at a tired raccoon. I grabbed his collar and pulled him away and told him he shouldn't be chasing poor old raccoons. We were standing there, the dog and me, when I heard it. Boom! Then whoop, 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 like a flat tire, but louder. Something passed overhead, like a thundercloud, moving 1,000,000 miles an hour. Bam! Thunk, thunk, thunk. Next came a deep quiet, like the earth, and everything on it was holding its breath. I looked down at my hand, and I still held the dog's collar. The dog was no longer in it. He had wiggled loose, and I hadn't even noticed. Now, I'm going to highlight this section because I feel like it's the first uh-oh. Something has happened that's going to move the plot forward. My legs were shaking so bad I barely made it up the bank. I heard Mama and Daddy hollering for me, but I was too tongue-tied to holler back. Mama was the first to reach me. What happened? I couldn't seem to talk. I pointed at the brown gash in the snow and that covered the back field. Daddy showed up, huffing and puffing. He looked at me. You okay? My sister came along next, shivering, rubber boots up to her bony knees. What did you do? I was still pointing. Daddy stared at the gash laying across the field, and then he started following it. We followed a few steps behind. The gash ended at what looked like a large black rock, half buried in the frozen dirt. Airplane must have broken up, Daddy said. Lucky it didn't hit the house. Lucky it didn't hit Carl, Mama said. She and Daddy stared at me with a peculiar look. Oh, now I know the main character's name. I'm just going to write MC. This is the main character. She and Daddy stared at me with a peculiar look. Suddenly, Daddy picked me up and held me tight like he hadn't done since I was a little boy. I didn't try to wriggle free. Space rock, Brother said. We hadn't even seen him walk up. He yanked off one of his mittens with his teeth, pulled out a magnet out of his pocket. Only Brother would have a magnet in his pocket. He got down on his knees. Don't touch that, Mama said. He ignored her and stuck the magnet on the rock. The magnet stood up straight, like a soldier at attention. Meteorite, he said. A meteor? Dad asked in amazement. Meteorite, Brother corrected him. Meteors are what you see streaking across the sky. When they hit the Earth's atmosphere, they break up and become meteorites. There was a meteor shower last night. That's why I was up so late. I bet I saw thousands of them. I'm going to pause and notice some of the author's craft here. Sometimes authors, when they throw a new word that we may not have the background knowledge, the schema to understand, oftentimes they give us context clues to figure out what a meteorite is. So, the author introduced this new word that I didn't maybe understand, but they helped me understand by reading in the story and trying to put together that inference. We all looked up at the winter sky. Then Brother pointed to the space rock. What are you going to do with it? I'll have to pull it out, Daddy said. I hope it didn't break the tractor. Brother chuckled. I don't think you're going to have to worry about the tractor anymore. That meteorite is probably worth $1 million. Daddy stared at Brother like he had lost his mind. Again, I'm seeing an important part of the plot. So far, we can infer that this family doesn't have a lot of money. This event here kind of signals it could be a solution. The meteorite is probably worth $1 million. Daddy stared at Brother like he had lost his mind. People came by every day. Reporters, scientists, people from town. Sometimes they showed up in the middle of the night. I know it's kind of late, they'd say, but we just drove 800 miles to see your meteorite. Daddy never complained. He would just smile and take them to the barn where we had put the big rock. And if they seemed hungry, Mama fed them. I'm going to pause here for just a second. This is really revealing about these characters' character traits. Even though these people showed up very late in the night, the dad never turned them away or complained or fussed at them for showing up. And if they were hungry, Mama would feed them. We know this family doesn't have a lot of money, so for them to share their food, we can tell that Mama and Daddy are very generous people. I started writing a poem about our rock from outer space. There's a space rock in our barn that's fell to earth upon our farm. I didn't get very far because Daddy couldn't seem to make up his mind about what to do with it. We'd find him sitting in the barn for hours at a time, just staring at the rock, all quiet and serious. I'm going to come back up here and add character traits. Generous. And I'm also going to highlight quiet and serious because that tells us what kind of characters they are as well. It weighed 937 pounds and 4 ounces, and pretty much everybody wanted to buy it. Someone offered Daddy $2 million, and then someone else offered $3 million. Then a man in a big black limousine said he'd pay $5 million. Daddy just smiled. That's a lot of money, sir, but I think I'll have to pass. Sister and brother said that he was just holding out for a better price. I wasn't so sure. I had a feeling he had something different on his mind. So it's curious to me that this characters know that their family is struggling, and all of those problems could be solved by these huge amounts of money, $5 million. So I'm going to kind of put brackets over here because I feel like this is kind of an important part of the story. It's revealing that something is about to happen. We did make money selling tiny meteorites. Brother said that when a meteorite falls, little chunks of rock fly off and scatter all around. He talked Daddy into buying a couple of metal detectors and went out every day and roamed the farm, picking up buckets of little stars. Oh, that is just such good figurative language. Buckets of little stars. I can really visualize what the author is saying there. About 3 months after the big rock fell, Daddy called us into the barn. Sitting on the rock was a little white wooden box with a small slit in the top. Brother picked it up and shook it. It's empty, and the lid's nailed shut. That's right, Daddy said. Then he turned to us all. Let's go for a walk. We traipsed through the crunchy snow to the back field. If that meteorite had gone 1,000 yards further, Daddy said, it would have landed on the Johnsons' place. 2 miles north, and it would have landed right smack in the middle of town. He shook his head sadly. That could have been real bad. He looked at us all in turn. But that meteorite fell on our land, he said, and now a museum wants to pay us $7 million for it. That was too much money for us to wrap our minds around. We got 2 choices, Daddy said. We can sell it or we can keep it. We can't keep it, Mama said. I like meeting new people, but we can't have them coming at all hours of the day and night. Daddy smiled at her. I agree. What I propose, if we decide to keep it, is to move the meteorite into town. This rock has already brought lots of visitors to Rock Creek, and they are still coming. The mayor said that it's been mighty good business for the hotel and all the stores. She said that they'll build a little museum around our rock, and we can go see it anytime we want. And we would get nothing? Sister asked. Rock Creek is broke, Daddy said. They can't afford to pay us. He looked at Brother. How many of those little meteorites have we sold? Close to 600, Brother answered. But we have at least twice that many left. Daddy looked back at Sister. You got yourself a car? Yes, sir. Daddy looked at Mama. You got yourself some new cupboards? They're beauties, Mama answered. Daddy looked at Brother. You got yourself that telescope? Brother nodded. Then Daddy looked at me. As soon as summer comes, we're going to put an addition on the house. A room of my own, I said. We've paid down what we owe on the farm, Daddy went on. We've saved money for college. My truck is fixed. The point is that the meteorite has done us a lot of good. He looked down and kicked the dirt. Then he looked up. I believe that getting what you need out of something is better than getting all that you can out of something. I'm going to underline that and read that again. I believe that getting what you need out of something is better than getting all you can out of something. None of us said a word. This part of the story, I think, has taken us to the climax. These characters are presented with a choice. Choice 1, they sell the meteorite for $7 million, and they never have to worry about anything ever again. On the other hand, having the meteorite stay in town has really helped their friends and neighbors, and they've sold all those little tiny meteorites for enough money to fix most of the problems that they've had. We know this family has struggled with money, and now the daddy is saying that getting what you need out of something is better than getting all you can out of something. Think for a second. What do you think he's really saying here? To me, I think that he's saying that getting what you can to cover your needs in life is better than trying to get all of your wants in life. So by getting what you need out of the meteorite, it's better than getting everything they could ever want and squeezing that money dry for the $7 million. None of us said a word. So I think all the characters feel very differently about the choice that's ahead of them. I think that we're about to see that change in characters. But it's not up to me, he said. The space rock belongs to the whole family. Here's what we're going to do. He handed each of us, a tiny meteorite and kept one for himself. Go to the barn, one at a time. If you think we should keep the space rock in town, put your meteorite in the box. I'll go last. If there aren't 5 meteorites in there, we'll sell the big rock, no questions asked. Brother went first, then me, sister, and Mama. Then we sat in the kitchen waiting. Finally, Daddy came in. He set the box down and pried the lid off. Can you feel your heart beating in this story? Like I can. Like it's super exciting. Like I'm wondering, is there going to be those 5 meteorites in the box? He set the box down and pried the lid off. Then, without looking, he reached inside and pulled out the first meteorite. I'm going to highlight this because I feel like it's an important moment in the story. 1, we all said out loud. He reached in again. 2, 3, 4. Daddy felt inside the box, pulled his hand out, and opened it. 5, he said quietly. There's a space rock in our barn that's fell to the earth upon our farm. People came from near and far to see our piece of shooting star. In the end, we had to free it because our family didn't need it. There's a space rock in our town. It stops the ghosts from coming around. People come from miles away to see the rock that will always stay. Man, what a great story. So we see so many elements that we're studying. We see those aha moments that characters have where they change their perspective, and we see the choices that are laid before them. And they're hard choices. Do they keep that $7 million and solve any money problem they've ever had? Or do they get what they need and then turn around and help the community around them? That's a hard situation. I don't know what I would do if I was in this story. All right, my friends, tomorrow we're going to focus on sequencing the events and putting them on a story map. I'll see you tomorrow.